Welcome to another episode of Hiring and Empowering Solutions. My name is Molly McGrath, and I am the creator of this office altering podcast. If you're a first-time listener, welcome. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. As always, you can check us out at hiringandempowering.com. We are going to have such a fun episode today. I am so excited to have attorney Elise Buie here with us as our guest. And today's topic, we are going to talk about, if you're a client of mine and we work together or you've listened to me on my podcast, I'm consistently talking to you about why attorneys should podcast. And I'm excited to have a real live case study here today and for Elise to share with us her process and even the evolution of her podcasting since she launched, and tell us a little bit about, that process, and encourage you to consider this and why you should consider this for your own personal and professional development and growth. So Elise, thank you for being here today.
Oh, thanks, Molly. I'm so excited to be here. I love chatting with you.
Yeah. So tell our listeners a little bit about your practice and a little bit about you.
Sure. I am a family law attorney located in Seattle, Washington, and we have a firm that has been kind of growing like gangbusters. So now I think we're a total of like 38 people. So it's been a lot of growth over the last couple of years, starting kind of at the beginning of the pandemic. And as part of that, you asked me to tell a little bit about myself too. I forgot. So I am a mom and stepmom. I have a blended family of 6, 3 girls, 3 boys, which is a ton of fun. And they're all like young adult types. We just brought the last one, my baby, to college this summer. So that was pretty exciting. But then we did a failed empty nest move and we got 2 puppies.
Oh,
so it's been pathetic. But we have these 2 awesome puppies, and we actually live south of Seattle on the water. So we have more fun with our puppies, training them and, trying to help them learn some manners.
Oh my goodness. And I'm going to put all your social links in the show notes, but you have got to, listeners, follow Elise on LinkedIn and Facebook. And again, the spelling of her name out, if you're running, jogging, whatever, and listening to this, it's EliseBuie. And I really want to encourage you because I see Elise everywhere. We were just chatting. I'm like, you are doing an amazing job with your social media. And she's like, that's my amazing social media team, but not only for the professional side, but the personal side. You have got to follow Elise and see her dogs and her beautiful property and all that she's doing personally, in addition to on LinkedIn, the amazing work you are doing with your podcast and professionally. You are just knocking it out of the park in both areas. And you all hear me talk a lot about Regina's group, Lawyer on the Beach. If this is the first time you're hearing it, please join that private Facebook group, because I think, Elise, I always see your name in there and you're always just sharing so much about, because you've had a virtual practice pre-pandemic, right?
We did. We've actually been virtual since we started in February 2015. I mean, I started the firm really solely for myself because I needed to figure out how to pay for these kids to go to college. And, I was a super involved mom. I was, that football mom, the treasurer of the school, boosters. And I was like, how am I supposed to sit in an office all day and actually do all the stuff I want to do? So we started the virtual firm, and I was really focused on bringing women back into the workforce who are lawyers, moms, who wanted to be able to have a little more life work integration and be able to do what they need to do on both fronts and do it well. And so we've been virtual. Like I said, we've been growing. We offer, just really unparalleled flexibility, both in hourly requirements, what your schedule looks like. And because we're remote, we have people all over the place working. And it's actually a great place to work. I know that sounds kind of bad maybe for me to say, but it's really just awesome. And I love my team, and they just collaborate with each other in amazing ways. Every day I am blown away by our team and what they're able to accomplish.
Yeah. And you do get to say that, girl, because it's just oozing out of you of what an amazing leader and coach and empowerer you are for your team. I remember our very first conversation that we had. Where did we meet? At Jennifer Campbell's event?
We did. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember when we met there and we hadn't met yet and you stood up and you talked and Lainey and I look at each other. We're like, oh my God, that we finally found like the poster child for everything we have been saying around team empowerment. Like you're just talking and just sharing about you. And then I think I got to meet your husband there too at breakfast one day. That was really cool. And you really, truly, it just oozes out of you. It's not lip service. You have created an extraordinary practice in regards to, I like what you just said, the work-life integration, and you just ooze that in everything that you share on social media and what have you. It's not lip service. And that's why you've had such a successful practice and you will continue to do so. It's so cool to see. So tell us about the podcast and just how you got started with that, and just share with us what has opened up and occurred for you personally in your practice since you launched your first podcast. And then you have some exciting news about how it's kind of evolved too, that I can't wait for our listeners to hear.
Well, thanks, Molly. Yeah, I started my first podcast was through the Maximum Lawyer Group, which is a group of, thousands of attorneys. And they reached out to me, Jim and Tyson, with a proposal for me to do this Maximum Mom podcast. My focus and my heart really is around moms who are lawyers and entrepreneurs. I mean, I just think that trifecta is like almost none other. I mean, obviously, I'm sure there's other professions that have that as well, but I mean, it is a monumental task to pull off all three of those things successfully. And so I started the Maximum Mom podcast in 2020, after COVID started, and it has just been, it just means so much to me, both personally and professionally, but being able to reach an audience of people who, completely know what I'm talking about and understand this trifecta and how difficult it is, and really normalizing, this idea of, and I'm very focused on life work integration. I don't even like putting work first. Our lives are what matters. I mean, let's all be serious. We work to do our lives. To take care of our families, to take care of ourselves, to become our best selves. And so I just think it is so important as, moms and lawyers to be able to get that right, where we can do what we need to do. And I think the podcast has allowed me to share that message. It has allowed me to meet so many interesting, amazing people, mostly women. But amazing women. And that has just opened up my world so much. I am such a, I'm a connector at heart. I love connecting people. When somebody needs a resource, I always have a resource. I'm that person that's like, oh, absolutely, I got you. And this podcast has been just more of that. And that it has allowed me to just learn more. And it's benefited us, our practice, professionally in all kinds of interesting ways where, I've been invited to speak in different venues, people that I've met through the podcast. And it's really just opened my eyes. I have to say, I think that being a mom and being a leader of my firm have been the most humbling roles I've had, and they allow for so much personal growth. And I probably had more personal growth than most to do, but that growth just kind of has continued and really exploded, I think, through the podcast and what it has done. And just, there's some basic things like just public speaking. I historically have been super nervous to get on video. I'm one of those people that's super self-conscious. I'm like, oh, Elise, you look fat or you look this. I have such like a negative, mean girl in my head. And I call her Eloise, but so I sometimes have to sass back at Eloise. But I mean, even that, has allowed me to grow and get more comfortable doing things. And like you said, I mean, we are launching a new podcast. It's actually launching this morning. I mean,
Yay.
if you want to, you could go to Parenting Buie and on Facebook or in Apple Podcasts or whatever, and listen and leave a review. But I mean, it is a podcast that is, focused very much in the Pacific Northwest, at least initially, talking about, parenting, not just parenting in divorce or co-parenting, real parenting. I mean, obviously having raised as many children as I have, like, I really get parenting, all the ups, downs, and all arounds. And I've spent professionally my career as a guardian ad litem or a parenting evaluator. So, I also have that professional expertise around parenting and development. And so it is just going to be an amazing podcast, all about parenting with a real focus. My husband is actually joining me on like every third podcast, and we are going through my new passion project, which is the Fair Play cards and book, written by Eve Rodsky, all about bringing gender equality into the home, which is just like one of the hugest things I care to talk about in the world, because I think it elevates women both in the home and professionally.
Wow. Oh, that's so cool that you get to do that with your husband. I mean, look at this journey of just number one, saying, yes, I'll do the podcast. And if any of you are not familiar with Maximum Lawyer, highly recommend. Phenomenal Facebook private groups that they have there. But really go to MaximumLawyer.com and check them out and and you'll be able to see Maximum Mom there in regards to their podcast. They also have podcast Maximum Lawyer, Maximum Growth, and Maximum Storytelling, which is really cool. But they reach out to you and just saying yes. And it's hilarious to hear you say that the judgy girl in your head around you on video, what have you, because you all will see when you get on how we're our own worst critic, because you'll see Elise on social media, what have you, and you're like, wait, what? She is a natural speaker. You'll listen to her podcast. And so that voice in your head, you just have to shut it down and just stand up and show up. And now look at this. Now you're doing this passion project with your husband. How great is that? And I can just imagine, so I have two questions for you. First and foremost, the first one, you raised your hand. You said yes. You showed up for the podcast. You've shared what it's helped with you in regards to your own personal confidence, public speaking, getting other opportunities that keep coming to you. What would you say if you could kind of go back and put yourself back into that first, your first episodes that you do in a podcast? I can't even bring myself to ever listen to them. But what would you say to attorneys about getting started? And if you could, just what they just do when they hit that first record button?
Just launch it like a hot mess.
I love that.
It just doesn't matter. You got to start somewhere and you just do it. And I mean, my first podcast was literally about Eloise and my mean girl in my head. I figured I should let everybody know that she existed so that they could know, that this was a thing that I dealt with. Because I mean, I feel like one of the things that is missing so much, I mean, really in all things marketing, is authenticity. And I get so tired of showing up to conferences or things and getting told how everything is perfect. I mean, I am a hot mess. I do things wrong. I mess up. I forget things. I, don't send out the right Zoom link. I mean, whatever I do wrong, all kinds of things. I burn dinner all the time. My poor children were just like, Mom, could you skip with the meals? Because you kind of stink at that. And so, I think just being authentic and realizing that, I mean, we're all in this life together, and this life is full of ups, downs, and all arounds. I think a lot of times people expect things somehow one day to get all perfect, I don't think that's a real thing. Like, I think that life is just full of hot messes everywhere. And the more you can roll with it and accept it and just be comfortable in it, I think the easier it gets. And I think the more we're able to talk about that as being an authentic thing, and that, I mean, the whole theater of the law has been, I mean, the curtain's been pulled back during COVID. You know, we all used to go to court all fancied up and gussied up in our pumps and pantyhose and suits and whatever. And, you know, now we're in our fleece PJ bottoms and our shirts, and our cats are walking across screens, and children are coming in, and, you know, dogs might be farting in the background, like all the things. And I think the authenticity of what has come from COVID is actually really positive. And I think that people need to embrace their authentic selves when they're branching out, doing something like starting a podcast, because you're the only person who can be you. And you bring, I mean, the ultimate like value add in whatever your business is, because it is you, and it's your secret sauce. And so let your secret sauce shine, and, you know, let it be spicy or sassy or whatever it is. Maybe yours is creamy, and I mean, but just like let it be there, and things work out. And I think your point of saying yes is, I mean, key. I mean, being able to say yes, even when you have no idea how you might make it happen. I mean, I have an opportunity that came to me last Friday night, and it was like this pretty big opportunity. And I mean, I'm pretty maxed out. And I literally just contacted my office. I was like, y'all all need to make a little room on your calendar. We are shifting directions in a moment. Okay. You know, but sometimes you do just have to grab opportunities when they arise.
Wow. I love that. So show up with all the chaos. And as you're talking, I'm like, wow, how cool. If I'm looking for a family law attorney and I stumble upon your podcast, or I Google Elise Buie family law group, what have you, and I stumble across the Parent Map, I stumble across the Maximum Mom podcast, and hearing you, people are hiring human beings, and this has to be such a way for you to beat out your competition, so to speak, because you're a human being, and people hire human beings, especially in the legal space. You all know, I don't have to share all the lawyer jokes. You know that people, the stereotypes that come with it, that you're very stuffy and narcissistic, or, you know, whatever people, the stories that people have with their last experience of the attorney that they used for their immigration. It doesn't matter what area of law you're in, estate planning, family law, PI, what have you, coming and sharing your humanness and coming on a podcast, your first podcast even, and hearing you talk about how, you know, you lose Zoom links and you're disorganized and you got your husband and your dogs and the blended family of 6, yes, 6 kids. And, you know, talking about being a survivor of Hurricane Katrina, your own divorce, you know, your many dish-filled sinks piled high. I would be like, that's the attorney I want to hire, because she's real, she's authentic, she's honest, she understands my world, because I don't think there's a human being on the world, whether they're trying to hide it or not, especially an entrepreneur, especially an attorney, especially somebody who's seeking to find an attorney, because they're dealing with something that is heavy and hard. That's why they're seeking you, whether it's immigration, estate planning, divorce, DUI, doesn't matter. And you find an attorney who is authentic, who is vulnerable, who is real, because guess what, that I would think the first message they're going to hear. This is a straight shooter. This is an honest person, and they're going to be very honest with me. And that's what I need. I need someone to tell me the truth about what my situation is, where I'm currently sitting, what the risks are, where we're headed, and where we're going. And I can't imagine. I would love for you to share with our listeners how this has changed even your client meetings and what your experiences with your client. You have to be beating out your competition just because of how you're showing up.
Well, it's interesting. And it's so interesting. You bring up that just like the meeting with the clients part, it's really a joke in our office that, I mean, the other people who do consults in our office are like, why do people tell you everything? They won't tell me anything. And I'm like, well, I was like, I do think it matters. I think there is a lot of it's that stuffiness that I think can turn people off and make it where they really have a hard time connecting human to human. And I do think, we all have kind of like our strengths. I mean, I'm one of those woo-woo types. I love like different personality testing and strength finders. And I mean, woo is like my, number one strength.
Oh, it's mine too. I love that.
And so, you know what I mean? Like we can talk to people. I mean, that's just a thing. We can connect with somebody. And so it's really, really helpful. And it's so funny too. I had a consult the other day and literally, I mean, you just cannot make this shit up. I'm literally on the phone. This poor guy is like telling me this pretty dramatic thing. And then all of a sudden you hear this really large noises. And he was like, did you hear that? I was like, yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, oh gosh, don't ask me any more questions. But then he asked, he's like, what was that? I was like, sea lions. He was like, no, that is not the answer I expected at all. I'm like, well, I said, I don't know if it's like mating season or what's going down right there. I was like, I've got some sea lion activity out my window big time. And literally like that silly, ridiculous thing, I mean, turned into a whole conversation about his love of marine biology. Where did I live? How was I able to, hear sea lions in the middle of the day? I mean, of course that person hired us. Do you know what I mean? But how random was that? Like, obviously I can't plan for, sea lion activities. But it was one of those things, whereas a lot of people would have, been like, they wouldn't have said that. They wouldn't have answered that it was sea lions, and I think being authentic in that regard just works better. I mean, at least it does for me, because I couldn't keep up with all the niceties and the, making everything look all packaged and cute. Like, that's just not how I go about things. I mean, I tend to be, just a lot more real. I'm so blunt with my clients, and they know that I'm going to be blunt. And I mean, even sometimes when I'm really blunt, I joke with them and I'm like, okay, I'm going to throw a bless your heart at the end because I'm a good Southern girl and I want you to feel better about this. And they're like, shut up, Elise. But, it works. And I think the more we can just be our true selves, I just think we all would find so much more joy in the world too, because when you're really living as your true self, I mean, things just flow better,
Oh, and I when I'm picking up, and even that story with the interaction with the client and the sea lions, that you're having fun. Like, you're really, when you show up, there's not all this energy that you're bringing to, okay, I have to overperform and I have to make certain that I land this sale and I have to get hired, and all the crap that we bring as business owners to the conversation. And just even hearing you talk, I'm like, oh my goodness, I know your property because I follow you so religiously on social media, and I love it. I feel like I'm sitting out there, in one of your kayaks, and I'm sure you're having fun where you're just showing up fully wholly as you and fully wholly present. And I love that you're even setting the tonality and the expectation, like, okay, I'm going to be blunt. I'm going to be, I don't love the word brutally honest. I heard this statement recently, I think on a podcast or something, brutally compassionate. I'm like, oh, I love that.
Oh, I do too. I love that.
You're having fun, Elise, and I'm sure your conversion rates are, because guess what? We're talking to attorneys and they're business owners and we have to talk about business, but I'm sure your conversion rates are off the chart just because you're showing up present and authentic and who you are. And I'm just even visualizing like that quote unquote consultation of how you're not bringing all the business crap that we do.
Oh, yeah, no. I feel like, though, I often have to explain to people because you know how it is. People have often talked to several other attorneys. And then, they'll call like 3 or 4 attorneys, which I think is awesome. I think it's so great that people really try to find a good fit because I think fit matters. I mean, I'm a huge believer in fit, like on our team as well. So, I mean, I'm a huge believer in fit when it comes to a client. I mean, I had a consult with somebody recently, and I mean, we ended up on the phone for 2 hours. I mean, I was supposed to be on the phone for 1 hour. She had all these child-related things that I could completely relate to. I'm literally like walking around my office, finding books, showing her on Zoom, the copy of the book so she can look it up. And I think it matters in all the ways. And it's interesting. I've never thought of it as fun. Like I've never used that word in my own head when I think of doing consults, but I think of consults as my opportunity to give back to the community. Whether this person hires me or not becomes immaterial to me while I'm on the consult, but it is my opportunity to provide value to people who are going through family transitional issues, whether it's divorce, parenting plan stuff, estate planning, whatever, issues with their child. And I do feel like I have a lot of value to offer in that arena, as far as just knowledge, expertise, resources, boots on the ground experience. And it's just my way to give back to people. And so I think in that context, I look at consults probably a little differently than a lot of people do.
Oh, I love that. And tell us about, so now can you talk a little bit about your podcast since you started podcasting and now it's just exploding? And do you have any tips in regards to, or, maybe aha moment of since you've been podcasting, what it has done for, if anything, transforming that conversation a little bit with the consultation or any step in the process with your client communication? Has it given you permission to show up as who you are? What are you taking away? Because I want our listeners really, truly to consider podcasting and how it's not just about you talking into a mic about yourself and how great you are or a subject matter, but how it's impacting that conference room and that connection and conversation with the client. If you could put yourself back to pre-podcasting and maybe that last consultation that you had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And again, for me, it's all about the connection. So like when I'm doing a podcast and I'm interviewing somebody, I mean, I am provided a document, like my team will provide me a document that has like talking points. We will go in and do a certain amount of research about each guest so that we know what they're interested in. And that has been really helpful to me because it allows me to pretty quickly, be able to look on one page in a spreadsheet, certain things. And then I can engage with that person on their level. And it's similar to a consult. Again, I've never thought about this, but it is similar to a consult where, your person has gone through the intake process and you have all these notes about their story, And one of the things that I have found when I help train people in consults or listen to consults of people in my office doing them, they often will go straight to like the process of the law. And it's like, yo, you are missing the whole point here of the client story or the podcast guest story. And I think the two are super similar as far as being able to be a great listener and hearing their story and then being able to help connect them. I mean, whether it's a podcast guest, I mean, again, I am like, I love connecting people. So, I mean, I end my podcast and often reach out to my guests and will be like, oh, when we talked about so-and-so or this, I thought about this for you, here's an email intro to this person, or, I've sent this book to you for you to read. I think it would be awesome, based on what you were talking about. I mean, really actually caring and and following up with those things. And I think the same is true with consults. I mean, I don't know how all lawyers do it, but I mean, I often will do a consult and I will tell the person in the consult, like, I am going to send this book to you, or I am going to do this. I mean, I have no idea if that person's hiring me or not. Like, that's not even, we haven't even talked about that yet. And even if we get to the end and it is decided that that person is not hiring us, I am still absolutely doing whatever it is I said I was going to do. Or if it was something that I learned just on the way and I think it would be valuable to them, I'm going to do it. And I think that matters, actually caring about other humans, human to human, not station to station.
Oh, it absolutely matters. I'm just even thinking, even if I didn't hire you and I received that follow-up, I received the book, what have you, and I get in a communication and a conversation with you, and you are showing up as you. I love it. Like where you're honest, you're to the point, you're humble, you're very connected. And run into somebody else that who doesn't run into somebody. Even last night, I do my monthly neighborhood cards with the girls in my neighborhood. We play euchre, and a new girl came, and guess what? She's going through a divorce. So who doesn't run into people that need your services all the time? And I'm just sitting there thinking, like, God, if I was in the greater Seattle area and be like, you've got to follow Elise, you got to get on, listen to her podcast, what have you, even if I didn't hire you for whatever reason, maybe my budget, or who knows, maybe you don't know. I was able to handle it through mediation, but that experience with you, holy moly. I mean, that's phenomenal. That is absolutely phenomenal. Let me ask you, go ahead.
If your card person needs an attorney out there in Colorado, you hit me up too, because I know some great family law attorneys.
Yes, absolutely. But I'll tell you, when I was even thinking of all the family law attorneys, like, my God, like the podcasting and the books, and now what you're doing with your husband, like you're a cool, fun, relatable human being that, I would hire. And again, I always say this, people hire human beings, not human doings, first and foremost. Oh my goodness. So in closing, give us some tips. Give our attorneys some confidence booster shots here, because you have no shortage of it. I just love you to pieces. You're just such an amazing attorney. You're doing such a phenomenal job connecting personally and professionally all over social media. Every lawyer group I'm in, you're constantly, I see your name all the time. And I love like that you lead with woo on the Strength Finder. And if any of you have not taken the Strength Finder, the definition of woo is win people over, and you just do it without every comment I see from you. You're a connector. You're constantly giving back in those groups. And it's just so fantastic. I just had to say that. So tell our listeners, give our attorneys some confidence booster shots here of why they should just start getting visible and start sharing who they are. And the easiest way to do that is, in my experience, a podcast platform.
Oh, I agree. I think podcast is such an amazing way to do it. And I think, you say it so well. Just show up and be you, and don't overthink things. Realize that it's all a journey. Everything is a journey. Your life as a lawyer, your life as a mom. Your life as a business owner. It is a journey. You're going to look back at whatever you did, 5 years ago and think to yourself, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? But if you don't put a stake in the sand now and start that journey, there's nothing to look back on. And one of the things that I have learned recently, I read a book, and I'm going to forget the exact title, but it's called like The Gap in the Gain. And it's, by Dan Kennedy, who, we won't get into politics or anything, but not one of my favorite people politically, but he writes a lot of really good books. And The Gap in the Gain it's this whole thing about if we're always looking forward to the ideal, we never get there, because the goalpost is always moving. But if you learn to be able to look backwards and see where you've come from, you see the real progress. And it is so true. And that was pretty revolutionary to me to think about it like that. I always was that person thinking ahead. And now I really take time and energy to look back and see the progress and watch the progression of what I've learned. And obviously I have a million things to learn. I mean, don't think for a second that I think I've got it all together, because I do not think that. But I know I've made massive strides, and I know I can continue making massive strides if I keep showing up as my authentic self, being true to who I am, and putting other people's what their need is at the forefront of what I'm doing. And maybe it's not always going to be ahead of what I need, because obviously we've got to get boundaries and things. But I mean, it can be equal sometimes to what I need, and always being willing to offer that value, because I think being an attorney is one of the greatest privileges. And I think practicing law in the United States is an honor and a privilege. And I hold it in a real high esteem. And I think because of that, we hold certain privilege in our society, that part of that is a responsibility to provide value to others, and to not just think about it all the time from a, what am I going to get out of it? Because I think there is a lot of value that can be shared that's fairly simple to share, but it can be life transforming for somebody else who might not know whatever it is, or the tip or the connection or the resource. And I don't know, that's what I think about it.
Oh my goodness, that's a mic drop right there. As I'm hearing you speak, any of our listeners, you have just solidified and I would assert, brought attorneys back to deep, deep pride for what they do. That was like a TED talk right there for being an attorney in the United States of America. That was beautiful, Elise. Thank you. Wow.
Thanks, Molly.
All right. So as soon as you said the gap, just for our listeners, I'm going to put this in the show. I'm like, oh, there's only one guy that's talking about the gap. So I Google searched the book, and it's The Gap and the Gain, The High Achiever's Guide to Happiness, Confidence, and Success by Dan Sullivan. And, but Dan Kennedy does write some amazing books. Is that the book you're talking about?
It is. You're right. And I'm so sorry. It's Dan Sullivan. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. The founder, the creator of, I remember going to one of Strategic Coaches events in the late 90s and hearing about the gap. So as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh, Sullivan's always talking about the gap, which I'm going to buy this book. Thank you for that. I'll put it in the show notes for our listeners as well, because if you do not know Dan Sullivan, he is amazing founder of the Strategic Coach, which is my first introduction to any type of personal development and first interaction with the word coach when it wasn't even a street term back in the 90s.
Wow. Well, and I would love it if you wouldn't mind putting Fair Play by Eve Rodsky in the show notes as well, because I tell you, for moms, it is game changing if to read that book and play those cards. She has a card game that is such a great way to introduce it to your partners. And I cannot share enough about Fair Play and its impact on my own life and just on the world. I mean, if we could get that in everybody's home, our world would look so different.
Oh, okay. You got it. That will be in the show notes too. Thank you for that. I'm going to buy that book as well. How fun.
Yeah, you can get yourself Christmas presents.
Oh, Elise, thank you for being our guest today. I'm going to put all your links to your social channels in the show notes. I'll put the 2 books, Fair Play, in addition to The Gap, in there as well. I'm going to put Maximum Mom. I'm going to put your links for your new podcast that's launching today. Oh my gosh, how cool is this? Congratulations on all your success. Thank you for that speech you just gave us for attorneys, of really just anchoring into the absolute honor and pride of, and for the work that you all do. And I just feel so lucky to be able to be in this industry with all of you game changers.
Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you and everything you do for attorneys and with the marketing and all the onboarding work and working to help, us find people, excellent team members to come into our offices. I mean, it's just, and I mean, the whole idea of being, getting that person with you in your office who's that entrepreneur type, who
Yes.
is right there doing all the things. I mean, that was so eye-opening to me when I met you in 2018. And it has been a definite evolution since then, as I keep turning more and more things over to people who just do better than I do at all these tasks that I used to do, even though I'm not so great at them all.
Oh, great. All right. That's a wrap for us. And again, make sure you hit the show notes. If you're running or whatever you're doing, if you're just listening, go back to our website and grab those show notes, because you're going to want to get all the goodies we discussed today. If you like what you hear on our podcast, please feel free to visit our website at hiringandempoweringsolutions.com. So we love that you are listening to this podcast. Please drop us a line with any feedback, suggested topics you'd like to hear. And absolutely, we'd love to hear about your victories and your win in regards to creating entrepreneurs in an entrepreneur's world.